Hi, how are
Hello.
you?
I'm good. Nice to meet you, everybody.
Nice to
Hello.
meet you too. So, this is actually the first episode, and I'm so excited, so freaking excited for this, actually.
Yay!
If you want to introduce yourself to the people here that are hearing us right now.
For sure. Hello to the people. My name is Latrexa Nova. I write pretty spicy monster and alien romance with a usually a kind of nerdy twist to them all the time.
I love that.
Thanks.
So, um, talk a little about yourself if you want to.
Um, in anything in particular, or
Um, Okay, so I can ask you some questions and we can go over there, like go with the flow.
yeah.
So, what makes you want to start writing?
So I've been writing my whole life, basically. Like when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a novelist and like have like a bunch of stories that I was working on and stuff like that. And then when I got older, I I always wanted people to read my writing, so I got into like role plays and stuff like that. Because at least if you're role playing with somebody and creating a story together, they're gonna read your writing. Um, and then I uh, I've I've just kind of always found a way to tell stories in a bunch of different forms. So in high school, I got into playwriting and doing like theater productions, and then I ended up moving into doing like screenwriting and focusing on film in college, and then um, I ended up befriending somebody who was doing like audio dramas. So I started writing audio dramas myself and like putting them on. And then I kind of cycled through screenwriting, playwriting, script writing for audio, and novel writing. Like over the next like 10-15 years. So yeah, I just like I don't know. I just have like a crazy desire to tell stories. I think it's because like I don't know. Reading like I won the award for like biggest bookworm in school, and that just never stopped. So I've always wanted to like tell stories that inspire people just as much as all the stories that I read that inspired me.
That's so cool, actually.
Thanks.
Like, it's such a fun story, like the one you have, because you started writing in high school and everything, and it was so cool.
hmm Yeah, I've had a fun
Um,
journey.
so I have to say something. I actually started Yacked Up
hmm
today in the morning.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
in chapter 2, and the first chapter, it was crazy. Not gonna lie, I was like,
hmm
already.
Yeah.
But
The way I set up Jacked Up, I had like such a clear vision of like the sort of inciting incident of the whole book of like just all the crazy fucked up stuff, and I was like, you know what? I feel like there's like all this dark stuff that you have to get through before you get to this point, but I want people to understand where this is going, so I'm just gonna put this in the very beginning.
like a little warning for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's like a cold open in like a TV show, or like having to
Yeah.
work back and figure out how we got there. So, yeah.
I actually I actually loved the beginning. It was like so crazy, and it was like for me it was like 10 in the morning, and I was reading that and I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, lots of murder and chaos. It's great.
Okay, so I have some general question like favorite color
hmm
and all of that stuff. If you want to go over there, or we can talk about the books.
Um, yeah, whatever you think would be most fun. We can go through the other stuff, or we can go through book stuff. I'm good with either.
Okay. So, I wanted to ask you like your favorite TV shows,
Mm.
so I can get to know you a little
Yeah.
more.
Uh okay. So I there's two TV shows that over the last like 20 years I've watched so many times, cuz like I put them on sometimes when I need to fall asleep, which are Futurama and Archer. And then I'm also like a big fan of Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries, which is a show about an Australian gentlewoman detective. Like she's like a detective as a hobby, and just keeps running into all these people getting murdered. Uh,
Oh my god, I love that.
yeah, and she's like really like super fashionable and glamorous and stuff like that. Um, but then has to go through. She's also like hyper feminist and everything. And there's a grumpy detective who tries to go by the book and everything, and she pushes up against him and everything, which is based actually on a it's based on a book series that, from what I hear, is kind of different from the TV series, because the book series is she like ends up with different people, but like in the TV series she's definitely like more focused towards the detective, even though she sleeps with so many people, which is also great to see. I love to see a sexually empowered woman in TV. So
For real.
yeah. um
They always show like women
mhm.
only with one guy,
Yeah,
so
or like if you do
it's
sleep, or like
different.
it's never really like celebrated in quite the same way. If they do have like a woman sleeping around and stuff like that, they'll,
Yeah.
usually it's a mark against her. But in in Miss Fisher, it's so funny because even towards the end of the show, like she's still flirty and like has all this history and stuff like that, and like she has no shame in her past, or like who she slept with at all. She has like respect for the people that she sleeps with generally. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just such a unique characterization that you don't really see a lot in TV shows. So, yeah.
I will have to watch it. Like honestly, that sounds so
Yeah.
cool. You will have to send me the name.
Yes, I will.
And your favorite movies, okay? I need to know that
Yes.
also.
Okay. I have like two favorite movies that have always stayed my favorite movies, and will probably always be my favorite. There's Amelie, which is about like um a quiet, kind of quirky girl in France who uh who's like she's raised to kind of be very, she thinks, oh, her family thinks she has like a heart disorder because her dad never touches her and stuff like that. So every single time he does a health checkup on her heart starts racing. And so she gets like homeschooled and stuff. And then later in life, she tries to like change everybody's lives for the better after Princess Diana dies, and then ends up like finding this dude who collects pictures from underneath photo booths and wanting to meet him. And it's just like I love the movies by this director because everything's connected. He does it not just in Amelie but also in another movie that he did called Delicatessen. um so I love that one. And then my other favorite is The Court Jester, starring Danny Kaye, which is about this guy who is part of this uh, rebel movement to put on the true king of England on the throne. But there's like a corrupt king on the throne, and the true king is a baby. And Danny Kaye's character is like he's an entertainer. He's a musician and stuff, but he wants to be like all manly and stuff. And so he's like, come on, I can fight for the king. And then he keeps getting put on baby duty. And then he he and the head of the guard, who's a woman, end up teaming up in order to like sneak the baby into the castle and put him on the throne. but in doing so, they find out that there's this jester who has access to the king's chambers and stuff like that. So they knock out the jester. He takes on his role and then like infiltrates the castle in this way. But what they don't know is that the jester is secretly an assassin. So there's this whole plot that like the king's uh, cabinet basically is like plotting to the false king is plotting to take over and everything. Um, and so he accidentally ends up like correctly killing on accident the right people. Oh wait, it's not him, but it looks like it's him that's killing it because all this like crazy plotting and stuff like that that happens, and it's really silly. There's so many good lines in it, and not enough people have seen this movie.
Oh my god, that it has so many plots in it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
only like hearing you talking about it is like it was one and another and another. It was like
yeah.
wow.
Oh, and then like also the cast is amazing because Glynis Johns, who was the mom in Mary Poppins, and Angela Lansbury, who, I mean, she's a legend in her own right. And then there's Basil Rathbone, who is like one of the greatest swordsmen of old Hollywood, are all in this movie among like other people. So it just has like this really strong, amazing cast. And then one of the writers on the movie too is Danny Kaye's wife, and who better than someone's wife to write up to your, you know, like biggest talents. So I just think it's such an amazingly done movie.
I actually haven't ever heard about that movie until now. So
Yeah, most
I
people
have
haven't,
to
so
watch it.
I strongly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah. Like, oh my god, you have so many good shows and movies as favorite.
Thank you.
I will have to watch them, honestly.
Thank you.
And I was just looking for a movie to watch today because I'm on vacation, so I have time.
Awesome.
So, now we're going to a little more book related questions. I want to know your favorite trope on books.
My favorite trope. Okay, if we're talking about romance, I think my favorite trope is probably enemies to lovers or like forced proximity. I really like bickering and bantering, and
Yeah.
and higher stakes. So I tend to really love enemies to lovers, especially if it's like real enemies to lovers. But I don't know. I really enjoy rom-coms in general. So even if it's tropes I don't really enjoy as much, I usually tend to enjoy them as long as there's good banter. And then
Yeah.
my favorite overall trope, well, I don't know if this is like a trope, but I like it when things when it focuses on more like mundane characters in really complex and ridiculous worlds. So like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy focuses on Arthur Dent, who is just a normal everyday dude who accidentally gets caught up in like aliens trying to plow through Earth to make way for a major super highway in space.
Yeah. So I know that's a hard question also because like there's so many tropes and
Yeah.
tropes and all of that. So
Yeah,
I
and tropes
was
are always just like a bouncing off point too for a book as opposed to like obviously the whole book.
yeah. And also it depends if the author knows how to write that trope.
Yes,
It depends a lot
absolutely.
if you like it or not.
Yeah. It's all in the characters for me. Like if the characters aren't strong or like interesting, then I won't be as into it. And I don't necessarily mean that they have to be good or anything like that. I think they just have to be interesting. And interesting is it just changes
Yeah.
from person to person too.
Yeah, I know many people that like books that you can feel like connected with the characters more than they are funny or stuff if they have character development.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's for each one of us as readers.
Yeah,
To
exactly.
see if we like it or not.
Yeah, we all have our particular
That's-
tastes.
Yeah, that's what I like about books. Like all of us have different taste, and all of us has like absolutely different. If we like a book
Mm-hmm.
or if we don't, it's totally different for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's something that as I've gotten older, I've like understood a lot more because I had a very narrow idea of like what was good or like worthwhile when I was younger. And man, I just needed to like get the stick out of my ass because I just feel like I don't know, it's way more fun to just kind of accept like you like what you like and it's okay to not like things, but also to understand that there's a place for books that like you may not like. 'Cause like I don't know. I think it's so cool that we live in like such an accessible era for both reading and writing books because there are so many more
Yeah.
diverse stories being told nowadays that couldn't have been told before in like pretty exclusively traditionally published landscape. Um, and now not with self-publishing being not just accessible but also like a fairly uh, like the platform to getting people to read your book being accessible as well. I just think it's I don't know. I think it's so cool, and so I just don't get. It just like it's exciting to me that like people have so many options, um, not just for writing but also for reading. Yeah.
Like, if we really think about it, in old times, you couldn't read ever about, I don't know, a reverse harem or something like that. Like, it was
Ye-
crazy if you read that.
yeah, it was really really rare to read that for sure. Like the only place I think you know what? I was gonna say the only place I ever found it was in fan fiction, but I'm thinking in the early days of fan fiction, you barely even saw like any sort of why choose stories in the early days of fan fiction either. Just because I don't know, people had like a more narrow idea of stuff. And I read
Yeah.
pretty widely on fan fiction sites as well as in libraries. So I feel like if there were why choose stories, I was gonna find them.
Yeah. So, we have crazy books right now. Like, I have read so many crazy books.
Mm-hmm.
And I know your books also are kind of crazy because they are monster related, things like
Yeah.
that. And and I was just watching your page on Amazon to see what I can read, and I was like, oh my god, like you have like 64 books published. I
I
saw,
think okay.
and
I
it's
think it's closer to like 45, but I have a lot of bundles, and also I have like 4 books on pre-order. So I don't have quite that many published, but I do have a lot published, and they're all short.
yeah, that's what I was watching too. Like, if you want to read something quick,
Mm-hmm.
your books are literally. I saw one that it was like 54 pages,
Mm-hmm.
and then I saw another one that I was like 100 and something. And I was like, I need to read her books because they are short, and I need to read short books right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, I'm a great and I actually have a I don't know when this is going up, but if it's going up before the second, I actually have like a almost all of my books are on sale for 99 cents right now too. Um 'Cause my birthday's coming up. But I started publishing short because originally this was just gonna be like a monster erotica pen, and then I ended up writing more like romance stuff too, and I just kind of kept it all in the same pen name. Um, but I started out with the 13 Kings of Halloween, which I was aiming to get all of those stories between 30 and 65 pages. And I wrote them all from September to October of 2021. Um, and I was releasing like one or two a week. Um,
Oh my
yeah,
god.
and I think the total is somewhere around like 150 to 180,000 words total or something. I don't know. I don't know how I did it too because I was working in a haunted maze at the time. And
Oh,
also,
that's so cool.
yeah, I was doing that and then my other jobs too. So I was working parties and then also like teaching after school science, uh, and working in the maze and writing all of this in like the 2 months that I wrote all those stories. And I'm like, wow, I don't know how I wrote like that consistently, that fast, that, you know, and I was so focused and driven. I was literally writing, so for the maze, we would be an hour in the maze and then we'd be an hour off for a break. And so when the hour off, I would have my iPad and I would be clicky clacking away trying to write. And like some of my other cast members would come up and like be like, "Oh, you working on something for school?" And I was like, no." And I was like, I don't know how to explain to these people that I'm writing monster like slut. But yeah.
You're like a superwoman right now for me, because working and writing and publishing like 3 books a week, that's crazy.
I mean, like, I didn't keep up with that pace. But yeah, I'm able to write in like really insane spurts. But I'm really bad at consistency. So while I do have the superpower of being able to write like 20,000 words in a day, I can't do that every day. But I have done it, I think, 4 times. I've written 20,000 words in a day, and I've written 10,000 words in a day, like, I don't know, probably like 20 times um, over the last
But
3, 4 years.
it is amazing still, like.
Yeah. I try not to beat myself up about the fact that I can't keep that up consistently because I can do it at all. And I
Yeah,
don't like dictate or anything like that. That's all out of my fingers.
and also you have to be enjoying what you write. What
Yeah.
are you writing? So.
Yeah. I sometimes I'm able to give myself like a crazy deadline and to somehow live up to it because I just like I'm like, okay, I got to do it by this deadline or whatever. And when I'm like fully motivated, then yeah, I can definitely do it. And it's really easy for me to come up with ideas and just like I don't know, once I'm out of the gunky headspace that doesn't like to get stuff done, and because I have really bad executive dysfunction because I have ADHD, um, I like I just won't do anything. But once I move past that, like when I hyper focus, I really, really, really focus. Yeah.
I know, hyperfocus is so real. Like, I understand
Yeah, yeah,
you.
yeah.
Okay, so this question is gonna be hard,
Hmm.
I think. So, who is your favorite author or authors in general?
This would be hard, except I actually do have a favorite author. It's Douglas Adams. He wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. He also wrote the Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. Um, and I definitely think he's like my absolute favorite author because he was the author that kind of unlocked in me that I didn't have to take things as seriously. And I also think so I discovered his books when I was like 15 or 14 and learning that yeah, just learning that you could so I used to get into arguments with hyper religious people a lot when I was a kid because like hypocrisy really bothered me. Um, and then when I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's kind of like a remedy to all of or like not a remedy, but like it's a balm to all of the hypocrisy and stuff like that because the whole point of the books is that nothing matters. There is no like higher power. There's nothing going on that like controls everything. Like stuff just happens and you deal with it, you go through with it and like it does it in this very comical way. Cuz like a major running joke of the whole series is you know, they're looking for the question to the answer to life, the universe, and everything because they have the answer, but they don't know what the question was that was asked in order to get that answer. Um, and yeah, it made me laugh like so hard reading it, and then uh, and it unlocked something in me, and I was able to actually like take things a lot less seriously and get a lot less mad at people and stuff like that. And then along the same lines of Douglas Adams is then I got into Christopher Moore, who also writes really like silly stories. And he, I guess another one that helped me kind of like work through. because I grew up in a religious area, but I'm not religious. And so then I read Lamb by Christopher Moore, which is about the life and times of Jesus told by his best friend Biff. And it's just really ridiculous and funny. And then I think one of my like newer favorite authors is Catherine Ann Kingsley, who wrote the Maze of Shadows series, which I really highly recommend if you like sort of fantasy stuff and Irish mythology and I guess it is kind of enemies to lovers. And it's a little bit darker without it's like a it's not super dark, but it still has like dark-ish stuff, and also like the main character, he's kind of villainous and stuff like that. So, yeah. Uh
Oh, I love
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Um I think it's so funny because when I first started reading it, I was like, "Oh, he's kind of like an edgelord, like he just comes off really like aggressively like, "Oh, look at me, I'm so evil" sort of thing." But then I was actually really surprised I'm okay with that, by the way, but like the further I got into it, she actually did a good job of kind of like justifying, not really justifying, but like really showing off exactly why he was evil and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I love when books do that because sometimes they don't explain to you why people are the way they are,
Yeah.
and you just hate them because they are like that, but you don't
Hmm.
know what actually happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I like it when things are well justified and well thought out, and it's always nice when it ends up happening that way.
I found so cool the fact that in the book that you said first, they had to find the question and not the answer.
Yeah.
And sometimes the books only go for you have to find the answer of the question, not the
Yeah.
question per se. So
Yeah, like
so that's so
I
cool.
think it makes fun of like the idea that like the end point in any journey is the point of it, when it should be the journey itself that is the whole point. Which is also something
Yeah.
I kind of stand by for my what I look for in stories. Is like I've always said that I don't really care about spoilers, because I don't think that spoilers matter if the rest of the story is good. There are certain instances, I guess, where I would say like, oh well, it's cool to go in and be completely surprised by something, but I feel like no spoiler has ever ruined a book or movie or TV show for me if the book or TV or movie show was like good, you know? Like maybe it ruined the experience of the twist ending or whatever, but it doesn't ruin any good storytelling if you know the ending of something, then you can always kind of like look for the clues along the way, which is fun too.
Yeah, I know many people that actually read the back first to know how it ends,
Yeah.
and then they start reading the book, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that, but I understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting.
So we already talked about, well, your favorite authors,
Hmm.
but your favorite books are still the same as the authors. You know, the same books that the authors wrote.
Yeah, it mostly, like I said, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's also a book of essays that Douglas Adams wrote that I really enjoyed, and I lost in a hotel room. I was so sad. Um,
No.
One day I'll replace it. And then, uh, oh man, what are my other favorite books? Oh, I forgot to say Neil Stevenson too. Um, there's two books of his that I really love: Snow Crash and Cryptonomicon. And then let's see here. Um, oh, I forgot to say like Tamara Pierce is also. I like from when I was a kid. I really loved Tamara Pierce and Gail Carson Levant. Oh, there's also so I also read like a lot of historical romance. So oh man, what are their names? Alyssa Clark is like one of my favorites, and I'm trying to remember the others. I have like a handful of Nicola Davison. For them I don't have specific books because it's their general vibe that I enjoy. um, but I'm trying to think if there's any of my favorite books that aren't also authors that I super adore. Um, oh, Okay, so this is weird, but like two of my favorite books are like nonfiction books. Um, but there's this book called The Disappearing Spoon by Sam Keen that goes into the history of the periodic table of elements and why it's organized the way that it is, and also the story of how we came to learn about some of the elements and things like that. And then one of my other favorite books is called How to Be Not Wrong by Jordan Ellison, which is like a mathematical approach to trying to be not wrong about things. And I don't know, it's just like one of my favorite books. I think it's weird to have some of my favorite books be nonfiction, considering that I've always kind of like preferred fiction, and like pretty crazy fiction too. But yeah. It, oh, I will say one of my favorite books in like the romance market is Beatrix Hollow's Cute but Psycho, which I went into kind of skeptically because a lot of my friends have like really severe mental illnesses and stuff like that, and so going like any sort of thing that is set in an asylum, um, I tend to be a little bit skeptical about whether I'm going to enjoy because of the way that like being in an asylum it can be like sensationalized and stuff like that in a very, I don't know, kind of toxic way sometimes for me. Um which
Mm.
it is what it is, people enjoy that. It's just for me personally like it's difficult sometimes. And also the way that like mental illnesses are portrayed sometimes. But that is not really what I feel like that book does at all, because the asylum itself is not a real insane asylum. It's like a it's it's a mockery of insane asylums in a way that is meant to just torment the people inside it, which is fine. That I can get behind as like a, if we're going to use the idea of an asylum to keep people, you know, in to keep people in line, to what's the word, rein in their powers or whatever. I'm okay with that. I think it also helps if it's not like a real kind of like a setting. There's a lot of stuff that I'm okay with in either monster romance or in like fantasy or supernatural stuff that were it to be in a contemporary novel, I would not be okay with, because you know you heighten the stakes, and also you're creating a new world when you have these otherworldly aspects to it. So yeah. But I like super enjoyed the book. It was also one of the few books where I like went back and forth between reading and listening to on audiobook. And I also really like the audiobook for it. I think that the narrators all did a really good job on that one.
That's so cool. I really loving your like the books that you're telling me about and everything. I'm really loving it. Like I
Thank
want to
you.
read all of them.
I'm glad I could get other people interested in the stuff that I'm interested in.
Okay, this is I don't know if it's gonna be hard,
Yeah.
but what's your favorite book of the ones that you wrote?
Okay. I feel like my favorite book usually ends up being the last book that I wrote, because I usually like I don't know, I feel like I get better with every book. However, I think my favorite, it might be Jacked Up, because Jacked Up is really different from I think almost every other book I've written, because I when I write, I overthink things like crazy, and I also I tend to try to write in ways that are so, because of the things that used to bother me when I would read, it affects the way that I write. So I would like not usually write very fucked up relationships and stuff like that. Or if I do write a fucked up relationship, it's usually done with a lot of humor. And Jacked Up is written with a lot of humor, but there's also a lot of darkness in it. And I think I have a lot of natural tendencies towards like kind of edgy, dark stuff. Just because, like, I don't know, it's the stuff I grew up reading and I enjoy reading it to some extent, but in a certain way. Like, I like Dark World, but like when the characters are soft with each other, but that's not what Jacked Up is. Jacked Up, I wanted to make him a villain and I wanted to make him evil, and I was like, I'm going to stand by that and I'm going to make it so that he treats her this way, but he is like stuck accidentally loving her and trying to mash up the loving her and the being evil thing, and trying to figure out what it would be like to, treat somebody in any capacity that way when they're evil and in love. And I had a lot of fun working through that. And I also, for all of my books that I get really into, I usually work in fun facts. So like the history, I put the actual history of how Jack in the Boxes were invented into the book. And use that as a jumping off point for the whole like mythology of how it works. And yeah, I don't know. I think Jacked Up, and then I think also Hot Summer's Prey is maybe my other favorite because it's the second novel I've ever written, and it wasn't supposed to be a novel. Originally, I was aiming to make that series like a novella series, but I had so much of the lore and the story in my head that I needed to get out that it ended up being like a full novel, which I've never accidentally written a novel before. And I loved the world that I came up with, and the friendships and like the characters, and I had a lot. Yeah, I think I had maybe some of the most fun coming up with the world building for that book and for the future books that are part of the same series.
So exciting, actually. I need to read it because you talked to me about it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I need to read it.
Thanks.
I want to know also, like, so many authors that I have talked,
Mm-hmm.
as besides from the podcast and everything, because this is the first chapter. I want to know if this happened to you too, because I have heard that so many authors have this, but does the characters develop on your brain, like they take control of what are you writing, or you are the one in control?
It's a mix of both. I definitely like if I'm in the zone, the characters will generally just like lead their own path. Especially if I don't have like a, so I'm not like a full pantser, which is like a author who writes by the seat of their pants, who just doesn't really plot things out or stuff like that, and kind of just writes stuff out. But like I can write completely without an outline. However, sometimes if I'm trying to like work on a deadline or stuff like that, I'll give myself a rough outline to work towards. And it's funny because the outline I work towards is never how the book goes. Because I'll usually put an outline that's like roughly to the normal romance beats, but then like as I work through the characters and they'll start wanting to like, they have to like work through certain things before they can get to the ending point and everything. And so as they're doing that, things kind of go off the tracks a little bit, and it becomes kind of a different story than I thought I was telling at first. So yeah, I mean, like I definitely do think that when you're trying to think through someone else's point of view, that in thinking through their point of view, you will write things that you never expected that you would write because you're trying to think like someone else. I mean, especially when you're writing in first person, but I think even if you're writing in third person, you know, you put your little characters together and they'll just end up doing stuff you never thought that they were going to do in the first place.
I love that, actually, because the way you said that, I have a line to follow, and then, but I never followed that line, and it always finished in another way.
Yeah.
That's so cool, actually, because at the end of it, you let your imagination flow, and you get, I don't know, maybe better development with the characters or better relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
that's so cool.
I think a strong point in my writing has always been like conversation, like how the characters are when they're talking back and forth. And I think that also comes from being a screenwriter and a playwright, is because in screenwriting and in theater, a lot of it is driven by dialogue instead of by, anything else. Um, Even though they say show don't tell, I still think like the majority of it is dialogue based. But anyways, um, or no, so I think particularly in theater, less so in film. In film, you can do more like more actual showing and not telling, but in theater, it is very dialogue based. So anyway, yeah, I think it just kind of helps shape how I write and the way that I explore character. And I think too, like it comes from like watching people in real life is like because I've always been like a people watcher, um, and the way that people are when you put two people together and you watch them interact and stuff like that, it reveals more about them than if they are living in their little personal inner worlds, because in your personal inner world you can be anything and like believe anything about yourself, but it's when you go up against like someone else that um the trueness of that is kind of tested and shaped and things like that.
I really, really love how all your writing experiences are the base of how you write, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when you're learning to write and things like that, people are like, "Oh, write from experience." That's not something you can necessarily do when you're writing like crazy, insane worlds, right? But I think I think when you do have more experience, just the more experiences that you have, it gives you more tools to work from in shaping characters, right? Like you'll have a more well-rounded idea of why people do the things that they do when you have more experience doing things, and also not just why people do the things that they do, but you'll have greater pools of inspiration to pull from when you have more experiences. So I I definitely try to use all of my experiences get used, including all of my weird little like information obsessions that I have, because I go into like insane deep dives on stuff, and it's so funny the amount of like research on something that I'll do and how little of it gets like whittled down into these really silly stories ultimately. Like I don't think people realize how much information I will learn about something before I make it into a stupid little story.
I love that. I actually think when people actually investigate, I don't know, like when you read a mafia book
Hmm.
and the mafia author says like all of this stuff about the world and the mafia, and you're like, how do they know that? Like it's great.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time, like, we do just make stuff up, but I also think that real life is so strange and ridiculous that when you can pull from real life, it makes for a more, like, fascinating, like, idea sometimes. So, like, one of my books is, the whole reason I wrote it is because I wanted to write Thanksgiving smut. And I was like, nobody ever writes like the holiday Thanksgiving erotica, so I'm gonna make one. And I think at the time, Vera Valentine was like one of the few people I'd seen who did it, as far as like supernatural or paranormal smut goes, because she and her writing partner Jael Lagos did Lagos, I think is how you say it actually, um, did something where the Thanksgiving leftovers come to life. No, they're
Oh my
shifters. They're shifters.
god.
I think is it Omegaverse or is it just shifters? But anyway, um, yeah. She bangs her Thanksgiving leftovers. And I feel like I couldn't really find anything else at the time that I wrote this. That was Thanksgiving. So what I did is I refreshed my memory of the Thanksgiving lore that we have in America, and also why we have that history in the first place. And then I went deeper into it because we're not taught the history of Thanksgiving correctly in our own in school or history books or anything like that. We have a very idealized version of it, and I say that even about the more cynical idea of how Thanksgiving came to be, we are still not really like we still don't learn the real history of Thanksgiving. So, anyways, I relearned the history of Thanksgiving as I was doing this and relearning about like the Puritans and stuff like that. Um, when uh, when they were in Europe, what they did is they were they were spreading all their pamphlets with all of their like religious stuff, and they kept getting kicked out of places, right? Um, so they had this printing press that they were printing everything on, and they brought the printing press with them to America, but their boat broke down 3 times or something on its way to America, so they kept having to go back and forth, right? So
Oh.
on the final time, they were too far in, they couldn't go back, and the ship was gonna like fall apart. And so, in trying to stop the ship from falling apart, they took apart pieces of their printing press and used the screw from their printing press to keep the ship together to get across the Atlantic. And I thought this was so funny that I was like, you know what? I also think puns are can be stupid and hilarious sometimes. So I'm gonna do everything I can to come up with a screw joke. And so I took the screw from the actual history, made it a major device in this dumb erotic short where there's the whole point of it is to just get a bunch of Puritans together there into an orgy and have them all like bang. And then they 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 get together in this like ceremony at the end, and the lead dude, they like put him out on the banquet table, and they're holding up the screw, and they're like, screw him, screw and it's all just a build up for a stupid pun. So
Oh my
yeah,
god.
this
Oh.
I just do terrible horrible things with real facts.
That was so funny, actually.
Yeah.
Um, I want to know if your characters are inspired by someone, or just they. I don't want to say just appear in your mind, but I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, I think some of my characters are heavily inspired by people or like kind of tributes to them. So like my the character in the main character Nisa in Enthralled by Death is inspired by my best friend actually, who is a florist who is like really fascinated by death, and like Nisa in that actually hates death, and has to come to terms with death and everything. But my friend's super into like the Hades and Persephone myth. So I kind of wrote that book as a tribute to her. And then in Jacked Up, a lot of melodies. Melody is inspired by two people. My best friend from middle school, who I've recently like started hanging out with a lot more, and then this girl that was in one of my voice acting classes just before the pandemic started. Um, she she had so many fucked up things kept happening to her, and then like she ended up working for this telemarketing company that did get raided by the FBI. And then my friend, my other friend uh, who was inspired, who inspired me for it. I told her, I was like, in your honor, I'm going to murder the terrible landlords. Because she was living in this place in LA, and like the landlords were awful. Like things got flooded, they didn't take care of it. So like a lot of the stuff in Jacked Up is kind of like um, a fictional vengeance for my friends. um, and then I mean, yeah, and then in Wet Hot Monster Summer, there's a lot of different aspects from some of my friends that are taken as inspiration. And then also I put a lot of me, like little pieces of me into all of my characters, I feel like. So, yeah, it's a mix of both. Sometimes I do just straight up like come up with people who are just their own people, but I tend to like use real life as like a starting point for a lot of the things that I do to kind of ground how ridiculous and crazy my books get.
I love that. And when you said the jacked up part of the
Uh-huh.
landlords, I read I think it was the second chapter
Mhm.
when something floated. I don't know if it was the bathroom
Uh-huh.
or
Yeah,
something.
it's the bathroom.
And and she was like, "I hate the landlords." Like, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like she was talking She hated the
Yeah,
landlords.
I tried to make them really, really corrupt and shitty because I also, okay, this is kind of a thing that I think is, I also, at some point in my life, I hung out with like a bunch of comedians for like 3 months to 6 months, or no, I think it was, maybe it was even a year. I don't know. Anyway, one of my best friends was really into stand up comedy, and so I started following her around, and then I started following all of her comedian friends around and stuff like that, and going to their open mics and stuff. And there's this idea in comedy of punching up, um, where instead of making fun of, you know, people who are on the lower end of the privilege spectrum, you make fun of people who are above you, right? Um,
Hmm.
so I I think that there is a tendency in a lot of books to villainize and stuff like the same sort of tired old tropes about people, which I'm really against. Like I don't like, and then also like I think that there's certain people who, you know, ultimately don't deserve like hatred, and I don't like to uh um get, even in fiction I have trouble like perpetuating hatred towards certain types of people. So when I think of villains, I try to think of people who are like genuinely villainous for their actions. So like in Jacked Up, like the landlords are not just like negligent, but they're also actively like uh actively harmful because they're like embezzling, and then they also get into like Bitcoin and crypto scams and stuff like that. And so like they're on multiple levels just like super shitty people. um and I tried to make that true of all of the villains in it, where um there's a there's a type of violence and awfulness you can create in the world that is sometimes an accident of like your own situation, but then there are other people who are genuinely villainous and like really make awful horrendous choices because they just don't care about the other people in the world. And it's less about survival and more about greed and stuff like that. So all the villains in Jacked Up are kind of with that idea of like people who are genuinely villainous for the fact that they just don't care about people. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I can notice the way that she was talking and everything, like she really hates them,
Yeah.
and they are gonna be really mean now that you told me. Like
Oh
they are
yeah.
gonna be. I, I don't know if I'm gonna say scammers. Maybe
They are
can
scammers.
can I say
They're
scammer?
scammers. Yeah, and like,
Another thing I want.
oh
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
I was gonna
Continue.
say like,
Sorry.
not everything, not everything's like outright said. Some of it's alluded to in Jacked Up and stuff, but yeah, there's certain people who don't die because I was like, ultimately they're just like victims of of a larger system. Even if they are doing a shitty thing, it's because they're more of a victim of the system than they are. Like you still choose to do shitty things even when you're a victim of the system, but I think there are less bad things and more bad things to do. Anyway.
I want to know how's your creative process to write your books. Like, if you have like a little thing that you do before you write or something.
So it depends because I'm not a very consistent person. Sometimes I can get like a lot done really fast, and sometimes I can just sit down in front of a computer and just go for it. I usually think of like two ideas that sort of conflict up against each other and kind of work from there. Or I will come up with a stupid pun to work towards, or um, I I'll think of something that like is funny to me and then just like try to live it out as earnestly as I can. Um, so like yeah, so one option is I get a vague idea for a story and I sit down and write. Like for the 13 Kinks, I had vague ideas for those stories, right? Where and I also didn't need
Hmm.
a very complex idea for any of them because they were just going to be like 30 to 60 pages each. So like The idea for the first one is I wanted to write a story about an incubus, and that's literally all I did. And I sat down and I just started writing whatever came into mind first thing off of that. Um, and then there's other times where I will get horrendously complex ideas. Like the first novel that I wrote, Love the Sin, Hate the Sinner. It's about two gender fluid shape shifting sex demons who accidentally fix a marriage and fall in love. Um, and I wanted it to be enemies to lovers. So I had like those ideas in mind when I was coming into it. The idea actually was suggested by my old roommate. She was like, "Oh, you should write a story about an incubus and a succubus who fall in love while um, servicing their summoners." Um, and their summoners are married, or no, like accidentally fixed the marriage. So yeah, I like took that and ran with it. And then because it was longer, I had to come up with more world building and stuff like that. And more reasons why they hated each other. And really, it was like exploring the why they hated each other that helped inform a lot of the thing. And also, it's not like I don't think Asmodeus hates Asta as much as Asta hates Asmodeus. But uh, yeah, I think for Asmodeus, it's more of a what's the word? More of a pride thing that Asta hates them at all. And then for something like Jacked Up, I think I came up with the idea. I wanted to write a sentient object romance. Um, and I had two ideas. I had Jacked Up, and then I had another idea, which one day I'll finish. It's about a mortar and pestle, and two gladiators that get trapped in the mortar and pestle. But anyways, for Jacked Up, I knew I wanted to write it about a Jack in the Box because I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna write a bunch of stuff that I really enjoy into this, which is I'm gonna do some weird history stuff. I want it to be in a circus, and I want it to be violent and bloody and stuff like that. And so those were like my main motivations for it. And I was like, I will just write stuff into this that makes just me happy, and maybe it'll make other people happy. And it's funny because like I think it is one of my better selling books because I wrote stuff to make me happy. um, and then for Hot Summer's Prey, I came up with the concept for it last year, and I was totally convinced I was going to write 5 books in the 3 to 4 months around summer. And like I said, I thought they were going to be novellas at the time. So I came up with like a basic concept where I want it to be a mashup of like a mystery series and a monster romance, like a really cozy like beach summer romance. And then I was like, oh, but then I have to come up with the mystery for it. And I feel like when I originally came up with it, the mystery wasn't as like intense. So I had to, the more I thought about the mystery and the more I thought about like all that, I ended up being like, oh, I can't write this in 3 4 months. And so I just kept thinking about it over the last year, and I'll get random ideas for stuff while I am watching YouTube or stuff like that, because like I said, a lot of my inspiration comes from real life. So and I also have like a YouTube addiction. I'm an information sponge. So I'll hear like an interesting fact, or like I'll watch a video essay and then want to work in either a concept or a fact that I learned from that into like the story that I'm writing. So it depends how long I get to sit with an idea for the process, I guess, because it gets more intricate and layered the longer I sit with a story. Like it's to a bad point too, because there was a story I wanted to write last year called Grumpy Sunshine, which I'm still working on to this day, that's about like the whole point was just to make a really dumb pun about literal sunshine being grumpy and then making it like an enemies to lovers romance. So I started with that concept, but then I decided I wanted it to be like a, what's the word? I wanted it to be like an allegory for global warming and stuff like that. And then so over the last year, I've learned a lot more about like specific things in climate change that have like helped inspire different aspects of the story. And then in addition to that, I was like, oh, but I've been wanting to write a character inspired by Hexus from Ferngully. So I worked that in too. So now it's, instead of being an MF story, it's it's a why choose, well, not a why choose, but it's a polyamorous story between three people now. One of them's literal sunshine, one of them's toxic sludge, and one of them's a crematorium worker. I don't know, just like the longer I sit with ideas, the more complex they get, which is also, I think, to some extent a detriment as much as it can be like a good thing, because I will get really in the weeds with ideas, and like my friend Vera Valentine, who wrote Unhinged, she's like straight out said to me that I need to like chill on some of my ideas, because she's like, people are just trying to like read something a little bit sillier. I'm like, but what if I get really complex about it? So yeah.
I love that you grab ideas for everything, like literally everywhere.
Yeah, literally everything is inspiration for me.
I also want to know, like, how you get inspired for the spicy things on your books.
So I think this is a funny question, because I'm asexual, and I have always found sex really baffling. Like when I was growing up, I didn't understand why everyone was obsessed with sex. I didn't have a sex drive, so I was like, I don't understand. Like there would be things that I just wouldn't make sense to me. Like after some terrible, awful, tragic thing happens, then people go and have sex, and I'm like, why? I just like didn't understand when I was younger. So because I didn't understand, and because I am an information sponge, I just learned as much as I could about sex, right? And I learned a lot about kink, and like anything that didn't make sense to me, I would then like obsess over and try to understand, like, how does this work? So I just learned a lot about sex, and like also um, read a lot, uh, not just not just nonfiction, but also fiction, um, because I, like I said, I just didn't understand. And so a lot of how I write spicy scenes comes from this acceptance of the absurdity of sex. Um, because I think that sex is more fun. Both, because I mean, like, it's not like I haven't had sex. I think sex is more fun when you can lean into kind of the ridiculousness of it, because sex isn't pretty. It's kind of gross, and stuff happens in it, but it can be like a nice thing. Like, I mean, like for other people, but like, I like the idea that it can be like a nice thing. um, and also like in fiction, sex is not necessarily supposed to be like a real representation of how it is. It's an idealized, a stylized like idea of what people want from sex, or like what people feel from sex, moreover than what it actually is. So the this is another thing where I think it's funny, because like I used to really be so cynical about sex scenes. I would skip over them, and sometimes I still do skip over sex scenes to this day, because sometimes they're just boring. But I think that uh, kind of when you go in accepting that sex is just kind of silly and stuff like that, that it can be more fun to read. Oh, that's where I was going. Is I was gonna say that, like, once again, this is where if I'm reading contemporary or if I'm reading historical romance, real life sex stuff bothers me a lot. Like there's so many virginity myths that are perpetuated in fiction that just bug the hell out of me. But it's fine if it's in like monster romance or stuff like that. And I feel like monster romance does a better job of creating, at least from the in the circle that I am in, there's a lot of monster romance writers who do a lot to like write more like sexually empowered and also knowledgeable things than people in contemporary. Even though we're writing about like bigger than Coke can sized monster dicks and stuff like that. Like I don't know. There's a lot of stuff within the act of sex, and also like the way that like the human body is treated in this, where like I don't know, more thought is put into it. And sure, sometimes we are just like slamming like crazy unrealistic shit into people, but again, it's the exaggerated ideal of it, right? That really matters. So when I write sex scenes, I try to write I don't write them to like make fun of sex. I write them from the understanding that like things are kind of silly, but like what really matters is like the connection between the two characters. And sometimes I am like thinking of, oh, how can I like one up this? Um, like in Jacked Up, I I really, really wanted. I don't know if I should spoil it for you. I want you to discover it, but I really wanted s- the first thing that you discover about his penis. I cracked myself up thinking about it, and then I think Vera is the one who came up with I shoot, I can't tell you about it because I want you to discover it. But yeah, and then I also wanted there to be like a true form for him as well. So yeah, I don't know. I will sometimes think about the shape of the anatomy, but I will be honest in telling you that unless I'm thinking of something silly to put into the shape of the anatomy, that the shape of the anatomy is like the last thing I think about. I think more about like the things that the characters can do for each other within the scene and the pleasures that they try to give each other, as opposed to
Mhm.
like, what's it look like, which is a problem in monster romance because everyone wants the special peen. And sometimes I'll be like, oh, oops, I gotta think of special peen. So I'll usually draw from like the character and stuff like that. So like I have a character who has like I have two characters that are like death characters, right? I have a Grim Reaper and I have a God of Death. So for both of them, I kind of took inspiration from like bones and things like that. But then also trying to think, okay, but how can I do this and make it more like a sex toy bone? So, um, and then sometimes I'll just see something silly, like my friend Cassie. She shared this video on TikTok of a gooey duck. No, sorry, not a gooey duck. It's called a yeah. Wait, no, sorry, it is called a gooey duck. It's spelled Geoduck. It's a clam that looks extraordinarily phallic, and I was like, "Yep, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make a penis that is inspired by the gooey duck." So yeah, I don't know. It just it's like with all the rest of my writing, how I'll take inspiration from tiny bits of real life and then just make it real intense and fantasized.
Oh my god. You're right with the thing that when you read monster um romance or
Hmm.
I don't know, dark romances,
Yeah.
they always focus on that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a huge draw for people, and it's so funny because like if you put me in a room with like a bunch of, it always blows my mind that people are like, oh well, I love the special peen, and for me I'm like, wait, what? Oh right, that's a thing that people enjoy. And I think it's so funny to say that as someone who is actively writing it and like stuff like that is like how last minute I think about it. um yeah.
Is the final touch. Like,
Yeah, I'm like, all
okay.
right, right. Monster Peen's basically supposed to be a sex toy. Got it.
Oh my god. I honestly I have never read a monster romance. I will have to, but I know I'm gonna be like, how does that fit? Because
Yeah.
it's.
Oh, you'll be asking questions when you get through Jacked Up for sure. um,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
The biggest question in Monster Romance is how does it fit? And bruh, it's magic. Like they're monsters. Don't think too hard. Although my other favorite thing is actually thinking too hard about it, right? And coming up with like ways that things work and stuff. So I always like it when authors, and I try to remember this for myself too, work in things like, special cum or whatever, or pre-cum, or something that has to do with like, you know, lubricating them or making them bigger. Sorry, making the person who is receiving the peen, um, like able to take the enormous, size of it. Like in Hot Summer's Prey, I gave him like a because his race of of monster is like they're made to be seducers. So I was like, all right, well then he can have like a special lubricating thing happen that's gonna make it so she can take him. Um, so yeah,
I I saw the cover of the book and I thought instantly of The Shape of the
yes,
Water. Like it reminds me a lot of that.
yeah, that was
Just by the cover.
so that's I was trying to think of like sea monsters that would be fun to do, and then so for that The Shape of Water and The Creature from the Black Lagoon are inspired by a Peruvian myth. So I actually learned a little bit more about the myth, and then I also learned a little bit of the language of the people, and I came up with my own variation on it because I didn't want to like fully bastardize the actual Peruvian myth. So I took inspiration from the myth, worked on my own, and still paid tribute to it in ways that I could, so that I wasn't giving people a completely like wrong interpretation of this actual real myth that is very under like people don't know about it. So yeah, it is inspired. Like the character is fully inspired by Shape of Water, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the Peruvian myth that both of those are inspired from. Hold on, I will find out the name of them. I always forget because the problem with being an information sponge is you forget names all the time, but you remember the general ideas of stuff. um,
Yeah, I get that. I actually do get that because
yeah.
I'm like you. Like, I love finding, like, if something I don't know happens in a book, I need to investigate it. Like, and I hyper focus on that. And after all of that, I forgot the names, but I know the whole
Mm-hmm.
story of the thing, and I'm like, oh, well, I still know that, but I don't
Yeah,
remember the
exactly.
name.
Well, also you're also like dealing with like multiple languages in your head. So,
Yeah,
um,
so it's harder.
yeah.
Because sometimes, okay, my friends make fun of me sometimes
Hmm.
because I forgot the some words in Spanish, like magically I forgot, and I only remember them in English. So I say them in English, and they make fun of me because they're like, you are talking too much English. You need to stop."
Anyway, it I think it I'm very certain that it's a Peruvian myth, but Google's also telling me it's Brazilian. I think it's just like the the Quechua people like it. It's in that general area. Um,
It can be like in the. Is it the Amazonas
yeah, it's in
there?
the Amazon.
Right.
Amazon. Oh yeah, that's the other thing too. Is like I'm always trying to for taking inspiration from myth. I'm trying to walk this line of like honoring like it sucks because I want to use more myths than just the popular ones that everyone knows, but I do not want to bastardize the memory. Like I don't want to bastardize the knowledge of those myths for people who don't already know about them. Like it's one thing to take like Greek myth or Norse mythology and like reinterpret like the mythologies in whatever way is helpful for you as a writer, right? But with a lot of like Native American mythology and uh, especially because it's so diverse and because there's so many tribes with their own ideas and stuff like that, and also because our knowledge of some of their mythology is passed through a colonizer lens, like it makes it kind of difficult to take inspiration from them in a way that is still honoring the mythology itself. So yeah, I like setting stuff. Like I want to set stuff in America. I want to take inspiration from these things. So it's trying to reconcile these aspects of it is something I think a lot about too. So like that's like part of why I kind of took this myth and did my own thing with it, but also still tried to like pay tribute to the myth that I took things from. And then also in thinking of the history of his people, I I kept in mind the history of people in South America um, through the years and stuff like that, and what his people's relationship would have been with South American peoples um, at the time, and like how the culture in the water changes over time in relation to the culture on land. Um, and I just deeply overthought a lot of this. And there's like tiny little hints and stuff to some of this history in it, but um, a lot of this doesn't make it in the book. It's just stuff I think about while I'm like coming up with the ideas.
I actually love that. It's like um it's new cuz you always read books about Greek mythology and all of
Yeah.
that, and no one actually pays attention to, I don't know, legends on South America
Mm-hmm.
or in other parts of the world in general. So it's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm just like a I've always been a really big mythology nerd. Like I even had like a podcast about mythology, um, and uh, and folklore and things like that. I love folklore so much. I love the way that like it just tells you stories of the people who created them and things like that. Um, and it's interesting too the way that folklore changes between different cultures. Like I, I know so many variations on like the Cinderella story or on uh Red Riding Hood. Like these stories change through history based on who's telling them. And there's
Yeah.
no consistency really. Like there's certain things that will stay consistent throughout history, and it's interesting to see what things stay consistent throughout history in different cultures. It shows you what was important to them and things like that. And it just like it's so depressing how much history and how much mythology and how many people like were just exterminated basically in the Americas, that just totally got rid of so many of these stories. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I definitely like try to educate myself, and then also for people who are still there, like in this part of the world, we don't really know a lot of like African mythology either, which Africa's like we also don't know a lot of Asian mythology either. And these are two huge continents with like extremely
Yeah.
diverse people that like we know so much mythology about Greeks and Norse and Romans and um and Irish, like, and these are tiny places compared to the rest of the world. And it's just crazy to me that these tiny places have taken up so much space in our understanding of mythology that we just don't bother like even thinking, oh yeah, there's these other mythologies, these other cultures that we could learn about. So um it's definitely something like I am very aware of and like try to continuously educate myself on and push against those ingrained kind of biases that you just don't bother like looking these things up. And it's something I also try to incorporate in my writing too, to sort of encourage people to think outside of the basic sort of mythologies that they hear over and over again.
I I love that. You should you should investigate sometime if you love this.
Yes.
I can tell. So you should investigate about the mythology and legends from my country, that is Chile.
Yeah, I totally.
And it's so cool. We have so many cool stories
Do you have any favorite ones?
really, I have there's one called La Pincoya y el Pincoy. It's like a siren thing,
Ooh.
like that appears in the south,
Uh huh.
and you can hear her like singing,
Mm-hmm.
and she only appears at certain times, but when you hear her singing, fishes will come. That all of that story came because of fishes disappeared
Mm-hmm.
at some point. So fishermen, that's how you call them.
Yeah.
um yeah, so fishermen couldn't find any food, So at one point they hear someone singing and they saw the silhouette of a siren, and they days after they had like this whole bunch of fishes there and they could actually eat something.
Oh, interesting.
So it's a really cool story. Yeah, it's a really cool story. And we have another one that I don't remember that much of the story, but I know I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
It was about a ghost ship. So yeah,
Nice.
we
I
have
love ghost
a
ships.
bunch of yeah. So we have a bunch of cool stories too.
I'm gonna look that up. I have La Pincoya in a tab now for me to look up later, but I'll try to find the ghost ship too. That's awesome.
Yeah. And there is like one, it's from the Mapuches. It's like a culture here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I should say culture, but it's a part of the people that was here before Spain came to America,
Uh-huh.
you know? And this is a myth, I think, about two serpents that one represents the sun and the other one represents the moon, or the no, the sky and the lands, and it's so cool. They are like massive
Ooh.
serpents, you know.
I really love like learning different creation myths and stuff like that, like of celestial bodies and all that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. Um okay. I have more questions if
Yes.
you want to continue.
Yeah, I'm down. Like I said, I'll keep talking. I love.
I'm loving it this so far.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Okay, this is I'm gonna keep saying this is gonna be a hard question, which I don't know if it's gonna be hard, but if you can if you could describe one of your books with a song, any book that you want, what song would it be?
With a sound?
With a song.
Oh, with a song.
Yeah.
That is a hard question. Oh man, too bad. I have an easy answer for a book that isn't out yet. There's a no, that one doesn't work. I was gonna say maybe "Sex with the Ghost" by Teddy. I can't remember his name. Works for him. I have a series called "I Got You, Boo," about this couple who, through falling in love, they end up fucking a bunch of ghosts. That's the series the Thanksgiving Puritan orgy is in. But that feels like cheating. Teddy Hyde, that's his name. Love the Sin, Hate the Sinner is that song "Horns" by what was his name? Bryce Fox, I think.
Okay.
Wait, is it Bryce Fox?
I don't know.
Anyway.
Actually,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then let's see here. I'm trying to think. Oh wait, what am I doing? Hold on, let me pull my phone up because I have actual playlists that I put stuff on. That music really heavily inspires me, even though I listen to like the same songs over and over again. A lot of Hozier is very inspirational for me. Oh, you know what? "Love Me Dead" is probably a pretty good one for "Jacked Up" by Ludo. "Tear You Apart" by She Wants Revenge also probably works for "Love the Sin, Hate the Sinner." I have a playlist for Hot Summer's Prey.
It was a really hard question.
It is a hard question. Just looking through these songs, being like, are there any songs that just like really speak specifically to a certain book? Oh, there's this song called "Crawled Out of the Sea" interlude by Laura Marling that totally works for Wet Hot Monster Summer. For I think the first two books, for Hot Summer's Prey and for the next book, Summer Lovecraft. And then there's what is that song? "Bottom of the River." Who's that by? Bottom of the River. Delta Ray. "Bottom of the River" by Delta Ray is definitely like a song for the second book in the series that Love the Sin, Hate the Sinner is in, which isn't out. This is my problem. Is I have answers for this, but all the books that I have answers for are not written yet. "The Red Means I Love You" by Mads Buckley also probably works for Jacked Up. Yeah, this is a very hard hard question. But those are songs I can think of that for sure represent the books that. So yeah, those are for sure the answers I got for you. But I think that's as good as I can do.
I love that. Um, ooh, I love this question. So, which one of your characters would you like to switch places with?
This is a hard question.
That, like, if you could be one of them for a day, which one would it be?
I would either want to switch places with Zephyr in the Wet Hot Monster Summer series. They're the character that inherits their grandmother's beachside house. Or I would want to switch places with maybe, what did I name her? Valerie in Ardently Abducted. It's a series I wrote that is kind of like an homage to all of the Regency romances, or not Regency, but all the historical romances that I've read. So in that, the aliens have technology that lets them take your dreams and your memories and like put them in like a hologram room so that you can like relive them. Uh, and I think that would be fun. Yeah, I think
That would be so
I
cool.
think one of those two would probably be my choices.
I love that. I would really have to read your books. I really want to understand like everything.
Oh, I hope you enjoy them. They're definitely like I will say that my one thing, for better or for worse, I tend to write very unique things. Sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse.
We're gonna go and see.
Yes.
What's one of your writing essentials that you don't have but you would love to have?
Writing essential that I don't have but I would love to have.
Yeah.
Like, I think I would like a nice comfy couch that is just the size of me that I can kind of sit in different weird positions in to write in.
I love that.
Because I have like a really comfy rocking chair, but my mom used to have this chair that was like the most comfortable couch on the face of the planet, and there was no bad way to sit in the couch. Like, I would lie across the armchairs, I would lie upside down, I would lie in all sorts of different directions on that couch, and every position was comfortable. And I tend to like not stay in one position while I'm lying down or sitting or anything like that. So I like being able to move around, but still be comfortable. So I think that is
Hmm.
the thing I don't have that I would like.
I love that. What's been the most surprising aspect of being a self-published author?
I think the number of things that I've written and published and finished. Um, I before I started self-publishing, I really struggled to finish stories. Uh, um, unless I work with other people, I don't tend to finish things. Or like I didn't used to. Or if it was for school, I would finish it, right? And I was in like a lot of playwriting and script writing and things like that. So I had reason to finish it when I was in school. And then I've also collaborated with people outside of school in theater and audio and stuff like that. And so I would have a finished product then if I was actively working with people. But for my own stories, because there's no real deadline, I wouldn't finish them. And I'm shocked, one, at the number of things I've written, two, that they're in this genre, because originally when I started, this was going to be my practice genre, and then I was going to start writing historical romance because it's the thing that I know best. But then I just kept writing monster romance because I was having so much fun with it. So I don't think I ever would have expected that I was going to continue with it or get as far into it as I have to this day. Like, I'm on my third year as a published author, which is crazy to think about. Um, so yeah, that's definitely the most surprising.
3 years and you have write so many books already. I
Yeah.
love it. Ooh, another trope that you wanna write and you have never write it.
See, that's a hard one because you've seen how many books I've written.
Yeah.
um, it's also like a matter of like, does it count if I'm in the process of writing it? Probably not. So, oh, this is real tough. You know what? I don't know if I have a trope, but I have a story that I have not started working on, and I don't have plans to work on for a while, but I hinted at it in one of my other books where it's this paraplegic, like she was going to be like a scientist, but she was going to work for NASA, but then her life kind of got altered, and her sister ends up falling in love with an alien, and then her sister doesn't want to leave Earth without her, so she's like, "Hey, can I take my sister with me?" And the alien's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So then she gets to go to space too, and I have it in my head like her whole like future of like I hinted in it that she's like, I don't know, that like guys like fall head over heels for her and stuff like that, and like I really want to write like a reverse harem about her. I recently put together like a spreadsheet of all of the books that like all my current whips, and of my main whips that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 active works in progress that I'm working on, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 more planned after the active ones that I'm working on, and then I have like a section of alluring ideas of things that I want to work on, but like I just don't have time for because I have too many ideas, right? And then I have another tab called semi abandoned ideas where I've made a cover for them. I've started working on them, but I've just kind of had to shelve them because once again, I've had too many ideas that have like fought to the forefront, which is crazy because one of these semi abandoned ideas, I have half of a novel written for. Like
Oh my god.
I have too like this is my problem is like I have things I want to write, sure, but then I'll just start writing them, and then I'll just add to the never ending like whip pile. So yeah.
You will need more than 24 hours a day,
Yeah, I
honestly.
also my brain doesn't work on a 24-hour cycle anyways. Like I don't sleep on a 24-hour cycle like normal people do. I think my brain prefers like a 30-hour cycle or a 36-hour cycle cuz yeah.
It works non-stop.
It does. It is. I literally have to drown it out with YouTube or music in order for me to like focus. So
Oh my god, I love that. Ooh, what's your... I don't know if I said this question. What's your favorite part of writing?
I don't think you did. My favorite part of writing is the moment that like a really fun idea will hit me, and I will just be like rubbing my hands together, like like internally, you know, about like trying to make it happen, and then like getting through it and just like totally knowing exactly where I'm going, getting to the end and being like, oh, that's even better than I thought it was gonna be. That's my favorite part of writing is like when that happens, for sure.
Okay, which one of your characters would you relate more or the most?
Who do I relate the most to? This is hard because, like I said, I put a little bit of myself in all of my characters. Maybe Zephyr, but Zephyr's story hasn't been written yet, although little bits of Zephyr have been put into Hot Summer's Prey. And then, hold on, now I have to remember all the books that I've written. Um, oh, maybe in I have a book called A Heart for Flying Sparks, and I put a lot of my like my experiences with autism into that book, in very specific ways. So maybe that one, and also like Friends too. I don't relate to Meg from I Got You Boo because she's a fully successful author. I think I'm successful in that I have an audience that I adore and that I write the things I enjoy, but she gets to actually like live off of her income. And also like there's a lot of things about Meg that I am not. I don't know. I section myself out so evenly between all of my characters. Like I can tell you exactly what parts of me are in each of my characters, but saying that there's one that has more of it is really hard to say. So I think maybe Valerie from Ardently Abducted, maybe the lead from A Heart for Flying Sparks, and maybe Zephyr from the Wet Hot Monster Summer series. I guess maybe if you took those three characters and put them together, you would have the most me.
I love that. I really do, because not many authors put part of them on their characters. So it's interesting to know that there's a part of you in each of the characters.
Yeah, and I sometimes I mean this in really small ways, but sometimes I mean this in bigger ways. But I think it's one, it's really hard to take the ADHD and the autism out of me. Like I think it's hard not to write characters who think like I think. Like I do. I definitely do write characters that don't think like I do. But also sometimes like I will, the way in which I put a piece of myself into the character is to think about something that I don't understand and then to make the character that thing that I don't understand. Um, so yeah, I think authors do put more of themselves into their characters than they realize for sure, though. I think this is true of most authors. Like, it is, as much as it is our job to think outside of ourselves and to create characters that are fully their own, I think we put so much of our own point of view and experiences into the characters that we write. I would say the least like me is probably Kendall. I think her name is Kendall from Beatings from Krampus.
Ooh. Okay, can you share a memorable moment from your writing journey experience from so far?
I got to my first signing that I went to was in Colorado in 2023, and that was awesome because I went because a bunch of my author friends were going, and then it was a really, like, I don't know, it was kind of a chaotic experience because of the nature of the way that this particular company puts on their signing events. But it was really cool getting to hang out with Vera Valentine and Cleo Evans and Alethea Faust and oh, and then like I got to meet Cleo's PA, Kenzie. Anyway, so like that was my first experience seeing the public and seeing actual people who had read my books. I think this was the craziest part to me, is because I expected there to be like people in line to see Cleo and Vera, but I was not really expecting any. Like I was expecting at most people who were reading their books would be like kind of into mine, because like between Cleo and Vera, I think it's a pretty good testament to like the silliness of my books. So I was like, all right, well, when people are standing in line for Cleo's books, luckily they're right next to mine, right? But there were people who actually came with my books, who had already had my books and asked me to sign them, and like meeting them in person. And then like I also got to meet like a few readers who like to this day like I interact with a whole bunch. And like one of them is a Danelle. She's Biblio Barbie on Instagram, and she calls me her Roman Empire, which is like the cutest thing ever. And I just, it's so like nice to have like, I don't know, big fans, I guess. Just because like I am a really like not well known author, so it's just really cool to like meet people in person, and to also like even people who don't know me, it's really cool to like talk to them about my ideas and see that they're interested in them and that they get excited about them when I talk to them about it. So signing events are definitely like a really unique experience for the ego, for sure.
Also, you there's a lot of people go to signing events, and you get to know so many people.
Yeah.
How you said that, like, you also get so much exposure of your books out there, because there's people watching all of the other authors, and they like they are gonna see you anyways.
Yeah.
Like, they gonna pass your stand, and they're gonna see your books, and they're gonna be interested in your books. So that's also cool.
Yeah. And I used to I used to have to sell cakes at a farmer's market, and also like I have to talk for a living because I teach after school science, and I also I do kids parties and stuff like that. So like I have to I know how to like talk to people too, which makes it a lot easier to go to these things because I'm naturally introverted. But at this point, I learned how to talk. Oh, I also forgot the other thing that happened at this signing. So one of this one person, Vic, who is like a TikTok creator. They'd read one of my books before, I think, but they really, I don't think, got to know my books until like they came there. But what I did end up doing is, because I'm like a face painter and a balloon artist, I was like, oh, I'll make you a balloon animal. And then I was like, what what are your like some of your favorite books? And they said that they love the Duskwalker Bride books. And so I was like, all right, I'll try to make a Duskwalker out of out of balloons. And I did. And they kept the balloon for like so long past its you know how balloons deflate over time, but they
Yeah.
kept the the fully deflated balloon like pinned to their wall for a long time. It was so funny.
That's so cool. And that's so cute also because to keep that like for so many
Yeah.
weeks or
Yeah.
months, it's so cute.
Yes.
Okay, what do you hope readers feel or experience when they read your books?
Well, I hope they laugh because I do write a lot of silly jokes into all of my books. But I also like, I don't know, I hope that people think a little bit differently because I think widening your point of view and your perspective on things can really make the world a better place. So, and I also hope, I don't know, I hope people just feel like they got something positive out of my books. I don't know if I have a necessarily specific thing that that I hope for them. I just hope that my books make their lives a little bit better.
I love that response actually, because that's the whole point of books. Like
Yeah.
to get away from real life, and when you read, your life actually gets better because
Mhm.
you stop thinking about things that you constantly think. So,
Yeah.
what challenges did you face while writing your debut novel or book?
Oh, that I'd never finished a book before. um uh okay, this is hard because like I said, the first things I wrote were all shorts, but I think I will count finishing all 13 of them in the timeline that I was only like a day behind on my timeline for it. So I think finishing all 13 of them counts for debut. Yeah, I think sticking to it and consistency is so hard, but I really did like I didn't have a single week during those 2 months where I wasn't releasing something. So for sure, just keep going is the hardest part.
And this is the last questions that I have. So, what's your advice to new indie authors that write same genre as you or new authors in general?
People who write the same genre or just in general. I th- this is hard because I think when you go into self-publishing, you have to know what you want to get out of it and what your goals are and what compromises you're willing to make and things like that and how much research you're willing to do. Because I think that you can just write the things that you love and you'll find an audience. However, finding that audience can be very difficult. It might take some time, and I think it gets easier the more you kind of get to know people. But also, I don't think that method works for everybody. I think socializing and networking and stuff doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. Everybody's experiences is unique, so I think you have to figure out what are the things that you value the most. What are the things that you are most willing to do, and then like find the way to make that work for you the best. Yeah.
I love that answer. So that's the last question. Oh my god.
We talked a lot.
We talked a lot. We talked almost 2 hours.
Yeah, we did. Well, thank you for having me. I hope people enjoy listening to this very long episode.
Thank you for being here. I actually enjoyed talking to you.
Well, thank you.
Um, I enjoyed your story and everything, how you started writing.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I really love seeing different point of views of authors, how they start and how they write and all
Right.
that. I just that's why I started this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Also, like to help authors to get more exposure
Mhm.
to more people to read them and all of that. So I'm really happy this worked out.
Yes, me too. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.